All right. Okay, so first thing I told myself this morning was I surrender. I surrender. I woke up with all kinds of stuff in my mind. I had all these, I got projects going on. I've got unresolved business issues, trying to figure out, all these things. I said, now is not the time. Now is the time to surrender. So I said, I surrender. Surrender to that the power of God within me and all around me. That's my practice, right? So that's how we start. I surrender. And then immediately, as soon as I surrendered and started to relax, so the practice is like this. So we have 4 postures. We have lying down, standing up, sitting, and walking. These are the 4 things. And when we begin this spiritual practice, we may just think about that our practice is, we sit in meditation. But the meditation can be ongoing. At least the mindfulness can be ongoing in all those postures. So when I wake up in the morning, I do my first meditation without getting out of the bed. Now you may think that's convenient. It's comfortable. So I surrender. I surrender that power of God within me and all around me. And then all of a sudden, this hope because I woke up with stuff in my mind about, and easily, there's a number of these things that I could be fearful about, a number of these things that I could actually start to work some anger up over. Definitely, they're disquieting, and they just come at you like that. It's weird. But as soon as I surrendered, then the hope rises up, and I realized that every one of these things that was in my mind a moment ago, someone else has already gone through them. Someone else has experienced them, and someone else has already got to the other side. And so I understand from my previous experience that since someone else has already done it, I can do it too. And then I realize that hope then becomes a faith. The faith is the knowing that this can all be healed. And then I make a decision right then. I align my will with goodwill. I say, that's exactly what I say. I align my will with goodwill. I can say this, it's like 50, 60 times a day. Whenever I start to worry about getting my way, I say, I align my will with goodwill. So because I understand that goodwill is what's best for everybody involved. And then I say, examine myself and all others in the light of God's wisdom. So that was the 4th thing I told myself this morning. Examine myself in the light of God's wisdom, myself and all others. And so here's this like seeing the truth, and it's very interesting. What we find when we really look deeply at our identity, we think that we may be all the bad thing. In that meditation we're talking about, maybe in the past we've done some things that we wish we hadn't done, and we may have some regret about that. We may identify ourselves with that bad behavior, but the fact of the matter is it's not us. That's not us. We're responsible for it, but it's not us. Who we are is pure and loving spirit. The fact of the matter is compassion is our deepest nature. It arises from our interconnection with all things. So we are truly and this actually says this in the NA literature, that we're pure and loving spirit. That's our identity. And so then if I can get myself to the point where I see that that's really my identity, and my identity is not my bad behavior. Again, I got to say this over and over again. It doesn't mean I'm not responsible for my bad behavior, but it also is that I am not my good behavior. This is what I very much like to identify myself with my good behavior and not with my bad behavior. But that's not me either. It's just behavior. It's just temporary things that I've done. So when I see clearly, though, I just see I'm spirit, and then immediately I have to remind myself, so if it's true for me, it's true for you. So I'm spirit, and so are you. And so I see myself and all others in the light of God's wisdom. And I'm open and receptive because I understand that God is the God or you could say the Buddha nature, or whatever, is at the foundation of all things. So I can be open and receptive so that I might be able to share whatever I've found with another person if necessary. Now, this morning, as I was just laying there doing this, I didn't share it with anybody. But so then to become aware of what the issues are and where they come from is this whole idea of the fear that jumps up at me as soon as I start thinking of all the odds and ends that are hanging out there, that they arise out of these little 7 character defects, which I'm not going to go into this morning, but what I want to do is I want to get my assets in front of my defects. If I think about it this way, the defect, okay, so the defect is like, we'll just say, well, I'll use one for an example, is this conditional love is on this end. Conditional love says, as long as you do what I say do, as long as you go along with my program, then I'm going to give you my approval and my affection, and if you don't, I won't. And at the other end is unconditional love. And this is the thing, this unconditional love is the thing that gets talked about so much, and almost never does it actually happen. We think it does. We actually would like to tell ourselves, oh yes, there's people in my life that I love them no matter what. But it's just not even true, because if we think about it, even actually the people that are closest to us, those are the ones that we've held the most things against. So but it's along this continuum. So I've got this conditional love where I need everybody to do exactly what I want them to do, and then I start to get a little bit better. It goes all the way to this other end of unconditional love where no matter what you do, I feel connected to you, and I desire only good to come to you. Now, it's important to understand that nobody will be perfect in this endeavor. But when we recognize what has happened, then we can say, okay, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to stop and I'm going to release, I'm going to forgive these things that I'm holding against these folks, and I'm going to see them, as I identified just a little bit earlier, as pure and loving spirit, just like me, so that I don't have to carry this resentment. But anyway, all this run on a continuum, and what I want to do in this practice is I want to focus on the good end, if you will. And I guess I should say it this way instead of saying the good end. The end of the continuum that brings peace. The end of the continuum that alleviates suffering. So I say to myself, through the power of divine order, I put first things first. And this is like the first commandment. It says, one God, no other gods before me. And so you can think, if we want to be very simple about this idea of putting first things first, is put God first. But a lot of people would read that as, I'm going to be circumspect. I'm going to be like very much, I'm focused on God. I'm going to be very holy. I'm going to try to do, but God in this regard means the all of everything. God is the whole of all of life. So putting first things first, then the way I do the practice is saying I put life first, all of life, not just my little individual group of experiences that are running down this time continuum, but all of life, the network, the web of life, and to see that is actually God, the unity of all life. So I want to put that first, and when I put that first, then that all of those good aspects of myself come to the front. And then I found out that I can't do this through a force of will. That I can't just say that's what I'm going to do, and I'm designing it this way, and that's how I'm going to be, and because on my own I'm still powerless. The reason I surrendered at the beginning was that on my own I'm powerless, and I need help from this power greater than myself. I need help from what I just put first. I put God first. I put the unity of all life first. I need help from that to help me eliminate these bad behaviors. And if I stop doing the bad behavior, over time, I don't even think about doing it. Just over time, it just kind of fades away. I know some people out there are going, when is that going to happen? So, okay, so it is though. And you will notice, everybody will notice that when we're on this path, some things that we used to do, we don't do anymore. And so that's like a good sign. It's a good sign that it's possible, and we can eliminate all of it. So then we get to the point where we are today is this idea of taking responsibility for life. Be responsible for our lives, and it just is this very simple idea that where I'm at right now, and I say me, but I'm saying for everybody, but if I say it like this, I'm going to say it like this, where you are right now is a direct result of everything that you have said, done, or left undone up until now. That doesn't sound so positive. Sounds like I might really be lecturing you. But this is the fact, that where I am right now is a direct result of everything that I've thought, said, done, or left undone up until now. And so this doesn't mean, as we've talked about a number of times, this doesn't mean that I'm responsible for things that other people have done to me that I didn't have control over. Now, I may have had some responsibility. I might want to look at that. But things happen. People do unexpected things. People do mean things sometimes. Unexpected circumstances occur. That's not my fault. But I'm still responsible for my life. So as we always say, I'm not responsible for what was done to me, but then I am responsible for what I do next. And this is how I'm able to stay, really now, the other thing to understand is because I'm responsible for my life doesn't mean I'm in control of my life. Because we already discussed this a million times that by myself I'm powerless. So being responsible for my life doesn't mean that I'm somehow like the master of the universe. It just means that I'm responsible for my choices. And if I make one of my choices, that putting first things first, if I start with that, then life is going to get in order. And so now I'm responsible for what happens next. No matter what occurs, I'm responsible for what happens next, what I do next. And so I say, well, what do I do next? What I do next is I forgive. What I do next is I extend love. This is always there's no other, there is absolutely no other course of action. Now, the details are different in each situation. But the starting point is always forgiveness, love. And they're like the same thing. They go together, right? So forgiveness is, I see it differently. Whatever the situation is that's happening in front of me, if it's causing me a problem, if it's causing me suffering, if it's somehow stealing my peace from me, I see it different. I'm going to look to see it differently. And so there's two things going on. There's the material world, what's happening in the material world, and then there's what's happening in spirit. And in the material world, there are many things that are happening that really aren't happening in spirit. And so from a very philosophical point of view, we could say that if they're not happening in spirit, they're really not happening at all. But that's a big leap, especially when we're in the midst of the material world and we're living in it. Right? This thing sure seems to be happening to me right now. Oh yeah, the Reverend said it's not really happening. So, but it seems to be happening. So in that regard to what's happening in the material world and the people that are in there doing their various things that I don't really approve of, or I think is a problem, or what's the matter with them, or all this kind of thing, I have to understand that the only reason that anyone could be doing something harmful to me is because they're hurting. Now, this doesn't excuse it. It doesn't say it's okay. It just says this is the fact. The fact is the only way that I can be hurtful in my words or actions is because I'm hurting. Now, that doesn't give me a free pass, but I need to recognize. So if I see the harm coming at me, I need to recognize that it is coming from fear. It is coming from this sense of separation. It is coming from some kind of suffering that the other person is involved in either craving, this attempt to find pleasure, or aversion, trying to escape from something. And that's all. And so this is A Course in Miracles says very clear about this. There's only two things going on. It's either fear or it's love. So somebody living in fear, and there's two thought systems: thought system of fear, thought system of love. Thought system of fear says I'm separate from you, and so because of that, you are in competition with me for limited resources. And those limited resources could be money, could be, in extreme situations, it could be food. Pretty soon we see with these power brokers, it's going to be water. We're going to, so we're, we start to view other people as a threat to our security. Not just start to, it's a biological imperative. It's like built into our genetics because of how we evolved. So we understand, though, that it's not just us. We're not just feeling threatened. Everybody else is. And the only reason that people are threatening us is because they're feeling threatened. Now, again, this doesn't mean we need to just let them roll over us. It just means we have to start from that recognition. And then starting from that recognition, I say, okay, I can forgive that. I can forgive that because I felt that fear. I felt that same fear. I know what that feels like. So I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to see that they're suffering, but I'm going to see right through their suffering to that pure and loving spirit who we've already said that that's who they are. I know sometimes it's very, and then we start to see things like, okay, now that means then that this person is actually a blessing to me. Boy, that's quite a leap. That every person that comes in front of us, this is another thing the Course says, every person that comes in front of us has a gift for us, and we have a gift for them. And, in the midst of a heated exchange, we could ask ourselves very quickly, we could say, this is a gift. Yes, I got to find it. There's a gift in there somewhere. And here's the gift. The gift is the ability to separate their behavior from who they are in our minds and see clearly that they are pure and loving spirit just like we are. And so by doing this, as soon as we're able to do that, then we actually free ourselves. Because look what happened. I'm just going to point out that the only way that we could feel under threat from somebody else's behavior is because that we were living in fear. So the fear was not just in them, it was in us. Because if we weren't, we would have just shined it on right off the bat. It would have been just like nothing happened. We wouldn't even have noticed. We just brushed it. We would have gone right over it, right past it, like it didn't even happen, because it didn't. But so all this recognition, then, this is the responsibility to see that our interactions with people based on fear, which is most of them. When we really start looking, we realize how much, if anytime we're irritated, anytime we're just slightly aggravated, anytime we're annoyed, anytime that we're impatient, it's all in that basis. It's all coming out of that thought system of fear. So our responsibility then is just to see what's real, recognize that this is what's really going on. And then this doesn't mean that we don't live in the material world and we don't do things in the material world. We do. But what happens is as soon as we do this forgiveness, the right answer comes to us. What our next action is. The words that need to be said in the situation just come. They come right from the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit just tells, not the Holy Ghost. This is not some alien invader that's living in your head. The Holy Spirit is part of our true identity. And when we're on the loving side, it speaks to us and it guides us. And this is another thing it says in the Course. I don't have to worry about what to do or what to say. He who sent me will direct me. So when I'm quiet, forgiving, at peace, these answers come easily. So yes, even in the midst of what seems to be a dangerous situation, it can be totally disarmed. I've actually had it happen. I'm not going to tell that story today. That's too long. And then some people don't. Some people get very upset when I tell the story. So I tell it again, though. I will tell it another time. So here is what we're responsible for in this new way of thinking: to refrain from harm. To refrain from harm. To not just react. To refrain from taking what is not freely given. To refrain from irresponsible and harmful sexual behavior. Don't go home now and tell your partner, Reverend said I'm not supposed to have sex. I did not say that. Sex is good. It's just this harmful behavior that gets in the way sometimes. To refrain from bad speech, to stop babbling. I know I've been doing it this morning. What in the world? To just stop for a second and think before the words come out. I was thinking about this idea of being responsible for our speech. At first, the very basic tenet here is don't lie. Okay, being responsible for speech is to say don't lie, tell the truth. But then also being responsible for our speech is don't gossip. Stop it, don't gossip. Joel Goldstein said he had a practice where he said, I've made a decision. I'm going to stop for 90 days. I'm going to stop gossiping. Just like going to a meeting a day for 90 days. I'm going to stop gossiping for 90 days. And when I say I'm going to stop gossiping, it means that I'm going to stop saying negative things about people. I'm going to stop participating in negative conversations with people. But also, I'm not even going to talk positively about people. I'm not going to have any conversation about people who aren't present. And he reported back that it cut down 90% of his conversation. So if we just notice. But then also this idea of refraining from, and it's the Buddhists call it unskillful speech. That the idea from refraining from it means just to not say the unnecessary thing. You notice how sometimes when there's a silence, it starts to get uncomfortable and we think we need to say something? We don't. We can just be quiet. Just relax. It's okay. There can be silence. And if we now I'm not talking about just gritting your teeth and holding on and okay, I'm not going to be the first one to talk. But if we relax into it, even if the silence is uncomfortable, our relaxing into the silence will make it comfortable. First for us, and then for whoever else is in the room. Because as soon as the nervousness goes away in us, people feel it. People know it. So it's okay. We can just be together and not have to say anything. Let's see how. I remember years ago, we had a Christmas Eve service at the Unity Church on North Main. And actually Debbie went to the service with me, with the kids, and we made in church, we made an agreement. Everybody in church made an agreement. We're not going to speak from the time we leave the church till we get up tomorrow morning. And I said, okay, I can do that. As soon as we get in the car, Debbie starts talking. I said, hey, didn't we just... See, I couldn't just be quiet. I had to correct her. We were supposed to be quiet till we get to... Anyway, it's not easy. But think about silent retreat. Go to a silent retreat. Just start. Go to a silent retreat over a weekend and just see. It's so powerful. It is so powerful. You can hardly stand it the first 12 hours. It seems like I gotta say something. But then after that, it starts to get comfortable. And I mean, people go to these silent retreats for weeks. There's one that's 6 months long. Anyway, we're responsible for our speech. Let's make it positive. And then we're responsible for what we take into our bodies and our minds. Responsible for what we take into our bodies and our minds. We refrain. The Buddhist precept here is to refrain from taking intoxicants. The reason it doesn't say this. The Buddhists, actually Shakyamuni, when he came up with this tenet, he wasn't saying, I don't want you to get high. That's not what he was saying. He was saying, refrain from intoxicants such that take away your mindfulness. So in other words, don't get too high. And so for many of us, we know that we can't do that, right? So many of us know that the first one is too many, right? But there's many people who that's not the case for. But this idea was, don't do something that clouds the mind to the point where you are not present. Because this is the whole secret to the spiritual path, is to be present. So, but now today we look at this a lot broader. Say, I'm not going to take in poisons. I'm going to watch what I eat. I'm going to eat. Now there's a whole movement. People even got T-shirts. Clean food. They eat clean food. It's a good idea. Good idea. I'm going to get on that next week. I know, it's so hard. It's so hard. So, okay, so to not take in poisons. And then we start to examine this when we really start thinking about this is a huge responsibility, because it means I actually have to monitor my own television watching. I have to say no to all this garbage that I've been, and when I say, listen, I'm not trying to be judgmental. So everybody's got different tastes in what they like to watch, and I don't care. It's fine. But I just know that anytime that I get, that I'm just mindlessly watching television, that I'm poisoning my mind. I know that if I just sit there, if I just turn on CNN and just sit there, I'm poisoning my mind. I am actually adding to the fear that my whole spiritual practice is about getting rid of. And here I am, feasting at the table of fear. So we put all these things together, and we shift our attention. We realize what's happening we're responsible to realize what's happening in the present moment. But we recognize that these mental states are temporary, and they're shifting all the time. It's just like our bodies are temporary. They're changing all the time. In the material world, everything is temporary. I want to take my attention and realize what's happening in the material world, totally accept what's happening, recognize what's happening in the material world, but transcend that and to go to that space in my mind of spirit that is unchanging, the actual unchanging love of God, which says that we are all connected and establishes in me a desire for only good to come to you, no matter what you seem to do in the material world. That's my responsibility. That's enough.